I thought today I'd do a little short video on kit built versus ready to run models of, in my case, steam locomotives. You don't really see many kit built diesel locomotives, to be fair. The market of kit built is very much dominated by steam and by types that you can't normally get ready to run. So I have a few in my collection that date back 1970s, 1980s. In subsequent years, manufacturers have actually made these ready to run. And you're looking at a classic example there of the Northeastern Railway Class O or the LNAR G5, depending on what you know it as. The black version is a new cast model. I think the tooling for that goes all the way back to late 70s, early 80s. The green, Northeastern Railway green version is fairly obviously the Bachmann that was released via TMC just last year, 2 years ago. Anyway, fairly recent. But there's a story behind why I've been building ready to run. Why I've been building kit built, I should say. I've actually completed I have 4 kit built locos. Apologies. And there's a reason why I'm kit building. It's to build up my skills in making model locomotives, seeing how these kits go together, learning from them, because ultimately my aim is to scratch build a locomotive, which I'll insert a picture in the video, but it is the Northeastern Railway Class 901, of which one is preserved as per the picture, which is number 910. I highly doubt if that particular prototype will ever be done ready to run. If somebody did and was brave, I think it would be a big seller. I think it would be equivalent of the Rapido's Stirling single. Everybody would want one because it's such a gorgeous locomotive. However, it's nothing in the pipeline. I can't see it happening, so I might have to scratch build it. So to learn a few tricks and things, I took on a few kit builds. So I've got 3 new casts. I've got a gem kit, and I'm currently working on a London Road models as well, which is on the workbench. But I thought I would give you a rundown of the pros and cons of these kits to start with, and hopefully it'll give you a bit of an idea of where we're going. First thing you notice about the 2 models you've got in front of you, in terms of overall dimensions and scale and everything else, you have to say they're pretty much identical. Yes, you could get a ruler out, measure it all, and find probably 1 or 2 discrepancies. But let's be honest, when you look at these two, they are both so very similar. You can't really knock either model. The new cast one, bearing in mind that I think the tooling for this will go back to the early 80s. You know, if you got a model like that in the early 80s, that was some piece of kit, that was. Standing side by side with the Bachmann, apart from the painting, which is my fault, in terms of the actual model itself, you can't fault it. It does look equally as good, I would say, as the very, very recent Bachmann model. I picked up this Class O, I should say, not zero, Class O, as a half-built model. So the basic body shell had already been assembled. None of the fittings and fixtures was there. It was bare metal. The chassis had been built, but the chassis didn't work very well. In fact, the gearbox in this particular unit didn't work at all. It was pretty much locked up solid, it being that badly assembled. So it was a strip down of the chassis, a reworking of the rear bogie to make it go around second radius curves, because I run set track, unfortunately, just space constraints, and a new motor and gearbox, the gearbox being a high-level kits gearbox, which are really, really, really superb. If you ever want a kit build, starting off point, get a high-level kits gearbox and motor. So I finished the Class 0, added a few embellishments that weren't there on the original build. So there's this bit of coal in the bunker, fairly obviously. There are a few more embellishments as it swings round. The lamp irons on the front wouldn't be there in the original kit. The tools, I've dropped a couple of tools on top of the tank. They obviously weren't part of the original kit. There is some representation under the bunker of the connecting rods and valve gear. Again, that's not part of the original kit. And then the brake rods, brake rigging. Again, it wasn't part of the original kit, but I've added some brakes and brake levers to that. And hey ho, there you go. Because I already was in possession of the green North Eastern Railway Bachmann unit, which is a lovely model. Don't get me wrong, it's fantastic. I decided to paint this one in a Northeastern black lined red. And I think it works really well. It's not a prototypical livery. These tank engines would have been in the green right up until LNER days, and probably from LNER days they would have been painted in LNER lined black. The LNER tended to reserve their green livery for the express passenger. The passenger tank engines would have been in black with lined red, and then I believe the freight locomotives would have just been in black. So there we go. I've also added a figure. You can probably just see him there in the cab. Yeah, and so I'm really pleased with the way this turned out. And I think, you know, when you look at it, you can't knock what Newcast were doing all those years ago. Really splendid effort. Okay. We'll have a little bit of a run session with these locomotives as well. So let's move on to the next pairing. Second example of a kit build locomotive. Newcast again. They call this their Q6, which was a North Eastern Railway T2. And also we've got the Hornby Q6 in LNER black. Both very handsome models, handsome engine. However, there is quite a bit of a discrepancy there between these two models, and that is in the length of the running board and the length of the boiler. The Newcast model is a noticeable chunk shorter, which is surprising because their track record, from what I've seen and what I've made, is that they tend to be a very close match to the ready to run, and therefore probably fairly prototypically accurate. It's been christened the Q5.5 by some people because it's not a Q6, it's not a Q5, it's somewhere in between. I don't know enough about the Q5 to say whether this is accurate in terms of its length and everything else. But it is, you know, a noticeably smaller boiler and shorter boiler than the Q6. And Hornby's model of the Q6, I think, is probably, I'm guessing here, less than 10 years old. About 10 years old maybe by now. In other words, I would think prototypically it is pretty accurate. And having seen the Q6 on the North Yorkshire Movers several times, it does look the part, the Hornby model. I think the Newcast one, to be fair, has probably got a bit of Q5 influence in there as opposed to a Q6. Or, in North Eastern Railway terms, the T1 class. The North Eastern Railway built three main classes of these engines. The TT1, the T2 and the T3. The T2 is the Q6, the T3 is the Q7, and the T and the T1 were basically the same engine with just different valve arrangements on the cylinders, but you couldn't tell anything from the outside. So the T and the T1 were both classified as Q5s under LNER. Interesting to note, the Q5s, when they first came out, had the same green, lined green that you see here that every engine in the North Eastern Railway stable had. So the first batch of Q5s did come out in what you would normally call their express passenger green with lining. But then every single locomotive in the North Eastern Railway stable had the same, more or less the same, green lined livery. In 1904, pretty soon after the first batch of Q5s came out, they changed it so that passenger engines were green lined, and their freight engines moved to black with red lining. So if I ever get another kit of this particular Q5, Q6, I'll probably do a black with lined red, a bit like the G5 or the Class O we just seen. However, when I built this particular new cast kit, it arrived with me all in its separate parts. It was untouched, so it's all built by myself. The chassis is normally a white metal block of a thing, but it didn't run particularly well. So with this particular Q5.5, T1.5, whatever you want to call it, I actually scratch built a chassis. So brass frames, and it works really well. Again, high level kits, gearbox and motor, pickups on all of the 8 driving wheels, and it's a lovely runner. And I think it looks really good in the NER green with the lining. But like I say, when you look at it closely, it is noticeably shorter than the Hornby model. And I think the boiler just sits a little bit lower and is slightly smaller in diameter. So although they called it a Q6, I do think it is more like a Q5. But there we go. Interesting stuff. So that's my second kit built model that I did, and I'm really pleased with the way that's turned out. It's a good one. Okay. And then last but not least, I recently did a video on these two. It is the H-Class. The Rapido H-Class in green, the Newcast H-Class in North Eastern Railway lined black. Two splendid little locomotives, both very good in their own right. The Rapido one is a lovely runner, lovely decoration, and unique in the hobby in being a ready-to-run model in the T.W. Worsdale livery. We haven't seen that livery before. That goes back to the 1880s. And it's very, very nicely done. The only shame about that thing is it's all plastic. The Newcast model is all metal. There's a considerable difference in the weight of these two. The Newcast model still got its original, in this case its original white metal chassis, but I've got that working with a high level gearbox and it seems to work really well. So if it's not broken, don't try and fix it. And yeah, I'm really pleased with the the third of my kit built models. Not much more you can say about them really. Two very lovely little tank engines. The Rapido one, apart from the fact that it's all plastic, it is a very good model. It runs well. It's really lovely and smooth, and I can't really fault it. But you know, it would be nice to have a bit more weight about it, a bit of die cast. It's you can still buy them. It's not very good value for money. If I wasn't such a North Eastern Railway enthusiast, I probably wouldn't have bought one. But it was a bit of a must-have, especially in the T.W. Worsdale livery, which is, yeah, never been seen before. So it's great. I love them. and this was the third kit that I've built. It again arrived, the Newcast H-Class. It arrived totally unbuilt, so all of the building is done by myself, and all the decoration is done by myself, and I'm quite chuffed with the way it's turned out. There's a few extras that weren't on the original model that I've added. It's got a brass whistle. To be fair, the Rapido has a brass whistle as well, because originally it was plastic, and in the first 24 hours I had it, caught on my sleeve and it pinged off and disappeared into God knows where. So I managed to get some brass whistles from Wizard Models. The Newcastle one originally had a white metal whistle, which was fairly poor, so I've substituted a brass one there. I fitted a brass one to the Rapido Y7 H-Class, and it's so much better than the plastic, it really is. Both of them have had a little bit of a coal load put on that left-hand bunker, which is where the coal would be on these particular things. I've also added in an extra little spare shovel on the Newcast model. And what else can I say? The Newcast model also has got brake rigging, which it didn't originally have, so I've added some brake rigging to that particular beastie. Otherwise, yeah, they're pretty sound as a pound. Okay.